Good morning, it's XMI. Guess what? It has been it's always a crazy week for us. But, Phil needs some me time.
I need 48 hours where I don't have to talk to people.
Hey, but this isn't about you. This isn't about us, it's about you. And today we're going to kind of tackle some things that stress people out and really confuse business owners. It's fear of financials. There's a couple things that you can do to take a deep breath and not be so scared of numbers. And you'll see some trends as an owner, even if you're not an accountant. And it will help you do that. Just realize you're not alone. And what we're going to do after this post is I'll post a link in the video for a video that goes over this fear of financials training we do, so you have more in-depth knowledge. So we're just going to touch on this today. I'm going to get into a lot of details on it. So what do you think the biggest challenge people have with financials is, Phil?
They don't understand them.
And why don't they understand them?
Because they don't pay attention to them.
Why don't they pay attention to them?
Because they're scared.
Because they're scared.
It's scary. There's two things that scare me the most. Number one, anytime I open a mailbox and I see an envelope that has the IRS on it, scares the hell out of me. Not because it's evil or bad, but you immediately go, okay, what do they want? What do they want? What do they want? Right?
Are they taking over my bank accounts?
I experienced this last week right before I was supposed to get on an airplane. But it's understanding your financials, because sometimes it is scary. There's ebb and flow in business. Sometimes the numbers look good, sometimes the numbers don't look as good, and it kind of numbers force you to address the elephant in the room. And I think that's where the real fear comes from, because a lot of times folks just don't know what they need to do, and that creates challenges.
Yeah, and ultimately, being scared of looking at your financials or understanding them just at the basic level is going to limit the growth of your business. Because if you don't know what you have, you don't know what you can do. If you don't know if you're making a profit or not, you don't know when to cut bait on something. And sometimes there's things you do in your business that you need to stop doing because they're costing you money.
Well, it's little things. Your financials will show you where money's leaking, right?
Yep.
Just little messages, and then signs that are going to force you to address challenges. Sometimes those challenges are going to be with personnel. Sometimes those challenges are going to be with vendors that maybe you have a long-term relationship with. But you pay attention to those financials, you realize, in my mind, I thought we were paying X, we're really paying G, and I really love this vendor, but I got to have a hard conversation because I can't do it this way. So what financials really do is they give you the good, the bad, and the ugly, and that's scary.
So Walmart squeezes their suppliers to lower the cost so they can sell you stuff for a cheaper price. And their model is selling as much as they can for a cheap price with minimal margins. They can do that because Walmart is Walmart.
Yeah.
Tell you right now, you're not Walmart. And you really need to first thing is, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago, but you need to understand your pricing model. What is your cost to produce? What is your margin, and how do you manage it? So the first thing I want to talk about is, how do you determine your margin? That's the first thing you need to know. And it's basically total sales or sale price minus cost divided by revenue, right? It's that simple. That will tell you your margin in a simple way to do it. One of the things that we look at, and it's a really simple tool, it's called a common size financial statement. And all you do is you take your P&L or you take your income statement and you divide every expense, cost of goods sold and down, by your total gross revenue. And then compare it month to month. And you're going to see some trends that happen because it's going to be a percentage. And it's a lot easier to see those percentage changes because it's a percent of what you're doing, right? And you're going to see there's some things that should stay flat or go down. And there's some things that will go up and down depending on what you're doing. And I'm telling you, if you take this approach to your profit and loss sheet or your income statement, you're going to get some really neat insights on what you're doing. I've looked at companies where their profit margin, their gross profit margin is 10%, right? That's just based on divided by cost of goods sold. They have no room in there for the other expenses of fixed expenses in the business. So heating and air, rent, utilities, payroll, etc. They're already behind because their margins are so low, they can't get there, or they got to sell so much more.
And as the owner, that's your money. That's the money that you should be taking to live your life with, to take care of things for your family, to invest in the business, to invest in other businesses, to do whatever it is you want to do. And so it's imperative that you really pay attention to your financials. There's Dave loves my little sayings.
It's not about money until it is.
It's not about money until it's about the money. But if you're not looking at your financials regularly, and once a quarter is not regularly, just so you know. Okay, once a month scares me,
but it's better.
But it's better. We really believe that you should be taking a look at your financials on a weekly basis, and really some things you want to lay eyes on them every day and just see, okay, what's going on, what's changed, what's not changed. And it depends somewhat on the business you're in too. Obviously, if you have more moving parts, more vendors, you have a quicker turn if you're manufacturing and you have a quick turn product compared to a product that maybe you're turning every 60 days, 30 days, that's going to all impact on how often you look, because you don't want to just go look at it and see the same stuff either. But you've got to be aware of your financials so you can make good leadership decisions within the company.
So let's talk about the second thing you need to watch if you're a business owner, your cash flow. There was a large energy company in the Midwest that was notorious for waiting 6 months to pay their vendors. And they were doing that to manage their cash flows. It was horrible. It was crushing. It was crushing the service companies, the suppliers of materials. But they were doing that to manage their balance sheet. My question for you is, what do your receivables look like? What do your payables look like? And how's your monthly cash flow? If your cash flow is behind, you got a big problem. And that's pretty easy to fix if you have some conversations with people, set up your terms better, do things you can do to manage it, but pay attention to it.
Yeah, and I think, cash flow is king, right? Dave knows I've got a leaking sieve right now in my personal life with this remodel. It's not really even leaking. It's at this point, it's fully blown out. There's a big hole and it's gushing cash right now. And so what I did is just sat down and looked at it and said, okay, wait a second. Is this really as bad as it feels? Or did a lot of stuff that I'm paying for just hit at one time so it feels worse than it is? And that's what it really ended up being. The truth is we're right on budget. Things are good. Might be over a little, but nothing bad. So if you're not paying attention to your numbers, if you're not really understanding them, what you'll also do is you'll create this psychological just torment. You just worry about stuff all the time financially. And a lot of times with clients, we find out it's not as bad as they think it is. It's just they don't understand it. If your way of tracking your finances is at the end of every month, I have X amount of money left, that's not a good plan. Okay? Because you're missing the opportunity to find money that's laying around that you're just stepping over. So you've really got to analyze it. We've had clients that in short order, we've found over $500,000. We're talking within a few weeks, just by analyzing their financials, looking at their operations and seeing exactly what is going on. So you've got to look at the numbers, even if you're not a number person. If you're not a number person, you got to have somebody that can help you through that process, but you've got to pay attention to your numbers. I can't say that enough.
Well, and I'm going to clarify something for Darren here. Darren, not necessarily. Lower prices don't mean more profit. And I'll give you two examples. One is Ferrari, and the other is Apple. Ferrari sells a premium product for a premium price. They actually raised their price and lowered their production to increase scarcity, and their profit margins went through the roof. Apple's the best example of the world. It's one of the most wealthy companies in the world, and you don't get anything for cheap at Apple.
That almost got me yesterday.
You get $1,600 for an iPad.
Yeah.
So, but what I'm saying is you got to really check that model, because if you're a small business, it's really hard to compete on price because you don't have the market yet and you don't have access to the market yet to do that. So you got to be careful. And there's something about adding value and being the premier provider in your space. If you're going to be the budget provider, you need to build that model to be the budget provider and understand what goes with that and how many units you have to sell to be profitable. Because you may have to sell 20,000 units to be profitable in one sense and 5 in the other sense. So let's be very careful about how we look at pricing. And that brings a good point. How are you pricing your product, right? Are you getting the right things there? Do you know what your product costs? before you go to market, so you're not underpricing your product.
And we see clients all the time that'll say, we charge X. And when you look at the financials, it just takes a couple seconds to go, you're not charging enough. You know, they'll say, well, we got all these cells. Well, maybe there's a reason why you have all these cells. You got all these cells because you're basically selling it 30-40% lower than you should be. You know, there's a happy medium to find on where you're competitive on price, right? But you're still making money. And too many times people just try to say, well, yeah, we'll do it for X, you know, and everybody's guilty of that. I'm not saying there's not projects, or again, if you're a manufacturer and you've got a great client, and you know, there's nothing wrong with every once in a while trying to cut them a break, but it needs to be a break that you're cutting based on real data and understanding of what your profitability is.
Yeah, and if you're looking at cash flows, here's some things questions you can answer that will help you. You know, how is your company obtaining cash to operate? Where are you spending cash? What cost changes in the company's cash balance from beginning to end of the accounting period? Those are 3 simple questions. You can go have your accountant explain that to you. Have your bookkeeper explain it to you. Make sure that you understand what's happening big picture. And it's 3 simple questions. How are we getting cash? Where are we spending cash? And why is the balance changing, either up or down? What are we doing good? What are we doing bad? Yeah. And then repeat what's good and stop what's bad.
Yeah, it's also, you know, Dave's the numbers guy in our organization. That's probably pretty obvious. Listen to his talk, but it's because he enjoys that more than I do, right? So we're a good example of what we're just talking about. You know, you've got to have in your organization, you got to know who sits in what chairs to help you get the end result that you want. And especially with smaller companies, a lot of times you're wearing multiple hats, and so it grinds on you. You know, we meet with our clients weekly, every week with many of our clients, and it's always an interesting conversation when they love to talk about the people stuff. They like to talk about all the stuff, but you pull out numbers and people just freak out. And it's because we're going to force you to look at what's really going on. It's a lot like, in my mind, I'm still, 25 years old and in great shape. In reality, not so much, right? So, but you've got to really pay attention to what you're doing and what the reality of your situation is, because you have no chance if you're not making decisions based on facts. If you're making decisions based on feelings with a business, you're going to mess up. Yep. Unless you're the luckiest person in the world, you're going to mess up. You've got to make decisions based on facts and based on the reality of where your business is today.
All right, so we're going to make this more fun now. I've been talking spreadsheets, and people are probably throwing up that are watching this right now, and I apologize. Here's the best example of why the math matters. Have you ever seen the movie Moneyball?
Oh boy, love that movie.
Well, all he did was solve the math problem.
He even said that it's math.
He goes, it's math. Your finances, all it is math.
Yeah. And
it goes to this. It's understanding, if you want to increase your profits, you either increase revenue or decrease expenses.
Those are your two options.
Increase revenue. It's not that hard, right?
Two things.
So if you just go at your finances with that approach, a Moneyball approach, it's a math problem. I need to make X to survive, or I want to make X for my family, or I need this for my company. Then figure out the math to get you to X and start stepping out what it takes to get you to X. Part is going to be increasing revenue, part is going to be becoming more efficient and decreasing expenses.
Yeah, so it is simple. It's just not easy. Does that make sense? Because it's going to force you to step into some areas that you don't like. Now, the good news is it's like everything in life. Once you do it for just a few weeks, it becomes part of your routine, and you'll be able to do that. We see this with our clients all the time. We've got clients that come and ask about their financials, and they look at you like you got 3 eyes. They've never paid attention to
throat chop.
Yeah. And then you get into it, and after they do it for a few weeks, they're like, okay, now it takes a few weeks before they start to realize that this isn't a mean monster that's going to jump off a spreadsheet and eat you, but it's a process. So you got to stay consistent in the process. You got to stay consistent in what you're looking at. and you got to execute on what your numbers are telling you. You can't know what it is and then not do anything about it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of the challenge too, is that you can identify what the problem is, but then the pains, it's like emotionally the pain's too tough to address the problem. And so, it's complex in that regard because you're going to be forced to address some things that make you uncomfortable.
All right, here's where I'm going to kick you in the shin. You're not going to like this.
Me, literally?
You're literally, because your best selling product may not be the best product for you to sell.
It's true.
So I'm going to explain this to you in a little more depth because you're probably looking at what, Dave, what, seriously? Come on.
That makes no sense.
It makes no sense. What I'm telling you is you need to analyze your product lines, your service line, each department, and determine which has the best profit margin. Your company makes money based on profit margin, right? I don't care if you sell 1,000 things. If you're not, Jennifer, we're not personally calling you out. I promise.
A little bit.
You just need to cross over. What you need to look at is look at your profit margin, look at where your best bang for your buck is, and double down on that, right? If you're selling ball bearings, and that's your best selling product, but you hate ball bearings, I don't care. If it's got the best profit margin, you become the best ball bearing seller in the world. I mean, that's how it is. And then you work on the other things to bring their profit margin up.
And then are those things that you're doing that you just flat shouldn't be doing.
If you're losing money.
If you're losing money and you've got all the processes, you've got everything in place, but the bottom line is there's just no margin there. There's just no profit there. Right? Well, then stop it. You got to quit doing that. Bob Newhart, stop it. Just stop it. Well, do you like it when that happens? No. Well, then stop it.
Yes.
Stop doing it. So there's
share a link to that.
We do need to share that link. It's hilarious. But I'll use an example. In one of our companies, we have stuff that really generates significant revenue, and then we have stuff that's much smaller revenue. And I remember years ago, I was looking at it going, my God, we're spending all this time doing this processing on these things, and it doesn't make any sense. And I started looking at it was because the most I could make doing this was such a tiny amount, my labor cost and technology and just all the stuff. It just made no sense to do it. So we just quit offering it. Sometimes the best answer is we don't do that anymore. If you're losing money, it doesn't matter if you're doing $1 million a month in revenue, but it costs you $1.2 million to do it. Stop it. I'm not saying on the surface just shut it down. I'm saying once you've evaluated, once you know that you're basing this decision on facts, if there's no way to turn this, then stop doing it. People will say all the time, well, I got to make payroll. Okay. My grandpa used to love to tell a joke. He said he was a farmer. He'd go stand out in front of the bank and he'd hand out $5 bills to anybody that walked up. And the owner of the bank came out and said, what are you doing? He says, I'm handing out $5 bills. And he goes, why are you doing that? He said, it beats farming. I mean, if you can't make money doing it, don't do it. I know that sounds stupid that somebody has to say that, but it is. I would say every client we've ever worked with had a product or a service. Not everyone. Well, no, yeah. There was one guy I was thinking of, who I'm probably thinking about, one of our favorite guys. Now, there's a difference between having a loss leader and something that's just not profitable, because the loss leader is something that ties in with another deliverable you're consistently giving to that client.
I didn't mean PhD level, Phil. You're confusing me.
Huh?
You're confusing me.
Sorry. But anyway, the bottom line is if you're doing something that's not making money, you've evaluated it, and you're never going to be able to turn around, then stop doing it. You got to stop. If you're, for me, I got to keep things simple in everything in my life. But, a few years back, 5-6 years back, I put on a ton of weight. And I kept saying, gosh, I just don't like how I feel. And I don't like how I look. And I don't like this. And I don't like that. And I used to have all this energy. Well, quit eating 19 pieces of pizza a day and 4 cupcakes and get up and move. You can change it, right? I mean, so there's just, it's still about personal choices. It's still about making those tough decisions, doing things that make you uncomfortable. It doesn't matter if it's something as simple as diet or if it's something that's complex. You're right, Darren. The KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid is what I used to. I don't know if that's politically
Silly,
correct.
keep it simple, silly.
But
Be polite.
but
Don't hurt anybody's feelings.
but you've got to make sure. My wife told me one time the reason why I don't get so offended is I don't have feelings. So that's not true, but you got to keep things simple. All your processes simple. The way you're reviewing your financials have to be simple. How you communicate with your employees, it's got to be simple. Don't make things more difficult than they are.
So with that, the last thing that I want you to think about in your company is your expense review, right? And when you look at your expenses, look at what you can do to reduce time in production. How are you going to improve processes across the organization to become more efficient, which you can do, right? And what can you do to improve the quality, to raise the price on your product and get more from the market? Okay, it's that simple. It's going to be, look, what can I do to reduce time, make it more efficient? What can I do to improve processes, streamline, which makes it more efficient? And what can I do to improve quality? If you look at your expenses that way, and then look at dead expenses and get rid of them, you're a mile ahead of everybody else. You really are.
Yeah, I think the last thing I would add is just simply to be transparent when you're talking to your accountant or when you're talking to your advisors. Be transparent with them. You instinctively typically know what the problems are. And the fact may be that you might be the problem. You personally might be the problem. If you want to fix things, you've got to hit the problems head on and make changes. It's that simple.
Yeah, so don't be overwhelmed. Don't let this scare you. Take a deep breath. Have somebody explain it to you in kindergarten terms.
Yeah.
You can look at financials like a kindergartner and make it easy for yourself if you're with the right people. Learn one area at a time. So pick one area we've talked about today and learn it, become a master at that area, and then move on. If you consistently do this, like Phil said before, in no time you're going to understand this. You're going to be making great business decisions. You're going to know the state of your company. You're going to be able to grow, and you're going to be living the dream again. So, it's not that hard. I'll put a more in-depth video that explains this. It's about a 40-minute video that walks through all of this and all the processes, and you can take that and do what you want to with it. But I want to make sure you have all the help you can.
And the Bob Newhart video.
That's going to be on the pages.
You got to giggle. You got to laugh sometimes.
That's amazing. It's pretty funny.
We play this a lot of live training events when we're trying to get the point across to people to, if you know what the problem is, you got to stop doing the problem. You got to stop what's creating the problem.
Yep.
And Bob Newhart did a skit. I don't even know on what show, but it's just absolutely hilarious. That applies perfectly to this. Stop it.
So with that, we're going to stop it.
We are going to stop it. I'm going to go take a nap.
Phil's got to go pick up tile, I think. Anyway, you guys have a great rest of your week. And with that, David, Phil, Exit Live, we are out of here.